So you probably clicked on this video because you're in the market to build a new bed. Well, welcome to this video. Today, I'll be showing you exactly how we make this bed. Just a quick note, all the timber we're gonna be using is from Home Depot. You're good and truly pine wood. So I've used 2x8s, 2x4s, and some 4x1s. Now I know you see the backboard and you think, well, there's a log there. I'm not gonna be able to replicate that. That's not to worry. The original plan and the plan I'm gonna show you, that backboard is supposed to be made out of a 2x8. So let's just pretend that those are 2x8 boards. Everything else you could recreate exactly. So now is the opportunity to take a screenshot of the drawings and all the measurements because I don't really mention the measurements anywhere else in the video. Now you can see at the top here, I am covering the top base. So in the top part of the drawing is the bottom base of the bed frame. Then you get the second height of the base, and then you get the front view, which is the actual backboard. The only part you'd want to ignore in this drawing is the backboard, because I actually changed the design of how it's supported, and I explain that later in the video. Of course, you have your timber list and all the drawings for that, and everything else is written down, and hopefully you can read my handwriting. Any questions, let me know. This is a queen size bed I went for. Of course, you have to adjust the measurements if you're making a smaller size than that. And this is a queen in Canada, which is king in UK. And one more side note, I do skip the part of the video where I cut down the timber to the right lengths, because you've already seen in the drawings the lengths of the right timber. So the next part you're about to see is me actually already putting the top base together and constructing that. Right, so we're on to the part of the construction of the bed. Now there's multiple ways you can join the bed together, like I'm talking about the base. The method I chose, which is again the most beginner friendly, easy and least time consuming method, which is just 90-degree L-shaped brackets that go on each corner of the bed, and obviously you just use screws to screw them together. So that's what I'm using, although you can use a bunch of other things that you wanted. You can, I mean, the cheapest option would be to just screw from here, but then although this is predominantly non-visible, I don't like screws going through the finished side of the product, so I try not to use screws if I can. There's the 2x8 timber, there's the 2x6 timber, and then the 4x1s are going to go on top, you'll see in a minute, to finish the base of the bed. And now once the base is fully screwed up with all the brackets and all the screws that you want to put in, the final piece for the base is to put these across like that. Spread them out evenly. I'm using 7. If you feel like you need more, just add more. Now to space these out evenly, what you could do is take the number of boards that you have, minus that of the total distance, okay? And then divide that by the amount of gaps that you have. So to make these gaps even, I need to have a gap of 179 mil between each board. Now, again, to keep track of it, rather than you going with a tape measure, you can just cut out a blocking for yourself, or 2 blockings on either end. Put those blockings, butt it against the blockings, and then put your screw in. Then take the blocking off, put in the next gap, butt it against, and then that way you keep the gaps nice and tidy. Now I just wanted to quickly cover, guys, what finish and stain I used for this exact project. Of course, you can do whatever you please, but this is just what I used to get the effect that I got. So I've sanded these down to 240 grit. Now I know it's actually recommended to probably sand down to 180. I just don't happen to have a 180 sandpaper, and I just couldn't be bothered getting it, so I sanded it to 240. But I very light, like the 240 sanding, when I went over it very quickly. So that's the sanding that I chose for it. The stain that I use for this timber, always use stain, don't use paint, just because if you're building something out of wood, you want the grain to show as much as possible. So I find it that with paint, you obviously cover that. Anyways, the stain, I've used General Finishes, and I've used a water-based wooden stain, and the color is actually antique oak, although, and this is only 1 coat. I've only used 1 coat because we don't want it darker. We actually prefer it lighter, so I've only used 1 coat for stain. Now for the finish, obviously we allow that to dry. Once that is dry, Osmo hard wax oil. Now this is a clear one, just because again, we've already chosen the color by using the stain. That's the one I used, and I'm actually gonna do 2 coats of this. Now, depending on what you're doing, if it's something that's high traffic, then you want to do 2 coats. You have to allow at least a day between each coat. And that is the that's the look after 1 coat. Now, one other thing to note, obviously these timbers are the timbers that are going around the bed flat. So obviously they're going to be high traffic. And one thing I did choose to do, now again, I know this is supposed to be a basic build, it is, You don't have to do this step to build the actual frame of the bed and all of it. You don't have to do this. This is just, you know, if you have a router, I did choose to router one end, and that's the end that's sticking out. Just so one, it's a bit less sharp, I guess. And two, I think it just looks nice. And I routed all the timbers on one edge, so it goes all the way around. Also, just a note, for the back, I didn't actually use any sort of finish on this, just because to say finish, this is a quite expensive finish, so I didn't feel like I needed to. One, it's not seen. Two, it's not even touched. If I haven't already mentioned, you will notice that I have two pieces of like kind of like a piece of log. Now, keep in mind that this is, I know this is not very easily sourced. I'm very lucky where I work. This was actually getting thrown away, and I kind of got it out of the skip to salvage it. Now, I'm actually using it for my backboard just because I feel like it looks stunning. Now, this, in my original plans, you've seen the drawings in my original plans, this is simply a 2x8 board. So if you don't have this, which is unlikely, then pretend that this is a 2x8 board. The exact same principles apply. So at the moment, we just got a square, right? Now, this 2x6 timber is going to go all the way around like such, right? Around the bed. Now, how do you fix this to this? Multiple ways. Of course, you can put angle brackets, you can make triangles to support the weight here, so there's no screws from the top. If that's what you're going for, like a modern, sleek, seamless look, then you don't want any screws or any screw holes showing, then that is one way. I was going to do that up until now. I've just got an idea, and I thought, why don't I just lay them out like this? And I sort of like looked around and I was like, wow, this actually looks really nice. So I think what I'm going to do actually now is actually put a screw straight through the main visual board into the base. You're not going to see a screw. The idea of this plug is right now I'm going to drill out a hole, put the screws in, right, and then plug the hole with this. The unique feature about this is that I'm not going to blend it. The whole idea is that I like the contrasting colors. I'm going to use my finish to finish these so they all feel the same and look the same. However, I'm not going to stain these. And same with the backboard. So the way the backboard's going to go on is I'm going to use plugs. I've got like bigger plugs. I'm going to use bigger plugs. And again, initially I was going to screw from the back. So again, seamless connection. You don't see the screws. But I've changed my mind and I'm actually going to screw from the front, and I'm just going to plug it up like this. So I'm using 6 of them. That's how I'm spreading them out. I'm going to divide them evenly. Right, I wanted to quickly go over the backrest, the final decision I've made on the backrest of the bed. So imagine this is the base of the bed. This is the 2x8 that's going in the square. These are the edges that go around the base, okay? Now pretend that this area here is notched out. So what I've done, I've taken a 2x6, okay? That's not stained, that's finished but not stained because I want to contrast it, although you can do whatever you like. I created, this is I believe a 10 degree angle. I mean, realistically, what I've done is I've notched out enough so this material is tied to this. So if you can see, right, this is now tied with that. I just didn't want it to, because if I was to not notch it out, right, and I want to angle this bit a little bit, right, so the backrest is not like fully straight, it's a bit of an angle. If I was to angle it, you have a space here, now you can fill it with a bunch of wood or whatever, but it's just not as strong of a structure. So I think if you do this, you get a stronger base that allows you to screw into the timber, and it's a tight squeeze. Not only that, I've also taken another 2x6, cut at an angle at whatever the height is, and I'm gonna screw this on the back of here. Again, the bottom is cut at a 5 degree angle, okay? I think it goes, no, it's this way. It's cut at a 5 degree angle. That way there's even more support. So once I attach my 2x8 or logs, whatever you're using for the backrest, there's just a bit more, there's even more support than if it was just one bit of timber, right? So that is the design from the side. Remember, the bottom is cut at 5 degrees. The notch, the way to do the notch is, because it's not actually an angle or anything, the way to do the notch is just take your timber. Once you cut the bottom, you'll have it at a certain angle, right? So if you cut it at 5 degrees, just put it against your timber and then trace. I hope that makes sense, but you put it against the timber like this, trace here, okay? So once you put it down and the bottom is flat, you just trace, you let in, I mean, the top here is about 6 mil, the bottom is probably taking 10 mil off, okay? So that's what you should have, 10 mil at the bottom, 5 mil there, draw a line, and then cut it. I cut it with a skill saw like this, like that, and then finish off with a handsaw. And then you'll have your backrest. Now, all we have to do is screw these two together, and that is ready. And then when I bring this to the base of the board, all I have to do is screw it through here into the board, or I can even screw it through here, whichever way I want it. Remember, this is not visual. And that way I have my backrest supported. Right, now for the most exciting part of the project, which is actually putting it all together and seeing the finished product, the first step is to put the ends on. Now I could have used clamps. Actually, I just realized I could have used clamps as well, but I'm not going to, just because I don't want to put any more dents or anything like that on the bit of timber here. So what I'm going to do, just got some offcuts from the base, so I know that it's the same height. Just going to put them here. That way this piece has got nowhere to go, but just to rest. Best thing to do is first, before you fix anything down, I'm gonna make all the corners first, just to make sure everything is adding up. I already pre-drilled the holes. Obviously, I'm gonna have to pre-drill into the base as well. But once that's lined up, I can just quickly do that. And then I'm using some 3-inch GRKs to actually fix it together, which are very thick screws that are actually construction graded. They're not for furniture making or anything. So yeah, once I've got everything lined up, GRKs in, and then we have our little plugs that we're gonna put wood glue. So final thing I wanted to share, sorry about the mic issues again, is how did I get this on? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I screwed it from the face, so I pre-drilled the holes initially, used clamps to clamp them in spot, and then once this was on, I just used plugs to plug them in. Now, where I wanted to put it, so it's completely down to your discretion how you think it looks the best. Now, having to have already, you can tell I've skipped past it. I've slept in this bed for now a couple of months since building it. I know it's taking me that long to get to actually editing the video. Is one mistake I have, I feel like I would change something in the future, is leaving nothing there. I find that sometimes at night the pillow starts to slide sort of into the hole, so maybe I would have redesigned that bit. Maybe I would have done a flat bit here or pushed this a bit lower, but I just wanted this to be as visible as possible, so that's what I've done. Face screw them and then just use the plugs to glue them and plug them in. That's essentially the finished product, and that is essentially how you construct the entire bed. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comments or shoot me a message, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Take care.